So everybody is not built to be an entrepreneur, okay? And everybody is also not built to work for somebody. But it's the same concept. An entrepreneur or somebody working, you have to have the joy, the heart, and the compassion.
Welcome to another episode of GEPic Journeys. Today we have an individual you could learn a lot from. This person manages a lot in a day, wears a lot of hats in a single day, and manages to do all that with a smile. Without further ado, welcome to GEPic Journeys, Chamindri.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here. I am Chamindri. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I do have a couple of businesses that I run. I have Chams Bakes, Chams Studios, and I've just started a non-profit organization called the Rays of Hope Foundation. And I also help out in the church I worship at.
So that's a brief introduction to herself. If you haven't known Chams, that we call in our own language, as you can see, she does a lot and she does everything perfectly, at least in our eyes. I don't know how she's challenges goes but we'll discuss it through and there'll be a lot for you to learn. So listen in, make sure that you subscribe to our channel, make sure you drop a like and keep following us for a lot of content like this and for you to be inspired and motivated as well. So let's get into your story.
So I'm actually going to start from being in school, doing my O-levels. So I was actually not a very academic person. I actually was never good at my studies. I was good at sports. I was good at managing teams and organizations. If believe it or not, I only studied for 2 weeks for my O-levels. I had some amazing teachers who had faith in me. I should mention Miss Fiona told me, she called me one day and she said, if you pass all your subjects, I will talk to the principal and let you do A-levels. But just like that, I studied for 2 weeks and I passed all my subjects. But the story behind it is also I had a mom who was praying. So I passed all my exams, didn't have enough grades to get into A-levels, but thanks to Miss Fiona and late Miss Fiona, I was able to stay in school and study for my A-levels. But it was not the studies I stayed in school for, it's everything else. The person I am today is actually through the foundations of my school, my mom, and everybody around me, like my friends. So I was captain, vice games captain at school. So I took very lead roles in like committees and organizations. I loved organizing stuff. For me, that was the joy.
Which has still continued.
Exactly, it still continues. Like my husband says, you have an idea every day in the morning, a new idea. So I didn't finish my A-levels. I went on a holiday with my father to the US and I saw this art school, a bus going around San Francisco. And I went in there and I loved the school. I applied. My mom even didn't know that I applied to the school till I came back.
So this is when you moved to the US?
No, this is way before. This was when I went on holiday.
Oh, really?
Yes. So normally when you go to the US, you have to have your SAT and TOEFL. You have to have that. But I went, I said, I don't have my SAT or my TOEFL. Then they said, send an application, send a portfolio, and let me take a look at it. So I got accepted to the Academy of Art University without anything. Okay, so I really feel, sometimes God has a purpose and a plan for you. So my purpose was that season during my life is to be away from Sri Lanka. So I studied there. I studied for 5 years. It took about 5 years to finish my degree. So I have a degree in Bachelor's of Fine Art in graphic designing. So I'm a branding and a packaging expert. That's where my heart is. That's what I love. Then somewhere down the line in 2006, I graduated in 2005. 2006, the school called me and said, would you like to teach? And I was like, me? Teach? So I actually taught at the Academy of Art for 18 years.
Very impressive.
So I was a professor. I have taught the entire Academy of Art University graphic design program, and then I have also, I was able, at the end of my teaching, I taught the portfolio class, which is the final class that I teach. So I got that opportunity. While I was doing that, I started my own business in the US. I started my business in 2010 in San Francisco. So I started a design firm and a print studio. So while teaching, I juggled a business all by myself there. It's easy to do business in Sri Lanka. It's harder to do it there. There's
Really?
a lot more paperwork. There's a lot more,
Things
you
to go through.
The paperwork is like insane. But again, I got a perfect location. I think it's again nothing but the grace of God. It was walking distance to my university, so I could work. It's a 5-minute walk to school to teach. So I just, built my relationships there. While I was working there, I was also involved at a company called Mervin's, where I also learned to multitask. I went to school. When I was in college, I went to school there and I worked. To be honest, when I went to school and worked, I actually unloaded trucks.
Really?
Yeah, I used to be the logistics manager, and I used to unload trucks. I used to unload. No, we have a team of 10.
Okay.
But I was the lead
Of that whole process.
Yeah. And we used to, during Christmas, we used to unload about 40 trucks within the month.
It's not easy.
It's not easy. Went to school at the same time. And again, by the grace of God, I was actually at the top of the class. And you learn things in life. Sometimes people think life is a challenge, but if the more you learn, the more you go through, you learn how to handle life. And I think my foundation, or the period that I was in the US, I feel was a training period to who I am today. Because I was able to understand life, I was able to appreciate stuff more. So that's kind of the early childhood or early part of Chamindri. Then came along, sometimes people get pressured to get married in Sri Lanka after a certain age. I went through that period of like, get married, how come you're not getting married? But I just kept on saying, I remember one summer I came here and my mom had this major chat with me. And I still remember sitting on my bed and saying, God, if marriage is for me, you put the person in front of me. Because I'm a girl who doesn't go looking for people. Just like that, God actually answered my prayer. And Suranjit at a party, at his cousin's party, we are family friends, he walked in for dinner. When I went and gave him a hug, I just felt this, wow. I felt this voice saying, here, you wanted someone in front? Here he is. So we have known each other. My husband and I have known each other since we were 3 years old. So yeah, but got married at 38. That's okay. When there's a plan and a purpose, I always say, let the plan and the purpose work. Don't force it.
Let it take its own course.
Own course, because I think if I had met him at 20, 25, I don't think I would have been interested.
Very interesting perspective there, because there is, as you mentioned, there's a bit of stigma in Sri Lanka that you have to get married at 25, 28, before 30 at least.
Exactly.
And
otherwise they think of you like, how come she's not married? Or how
I
come
saw
he's
this
not
thing
married?
where it's like you're single only until you're 25. After that, you're unmarried.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
It's sort of the thing that goes around. So it's interesting to see how that did not affect you.
Yeah, and I talk to all the single girls and boys, sometimes don't get that pressure to you, because when there's that pressure, you choose the wrong partner. It's worse to choose the wrong partner or be patient till the right partner comes along. So then my whole journey started. So I also started Chams Design and Print in Sri Lanka. Unfortunately, it didn't work because I was used to working in the US for 17 years. And for me, it was difficult the way the printing and the design industry kind of works in Sri Lanka.
And the clientele must be different.
It's different. Like I'm used to designing logos with concepts and, not just come up with so it was just difficult. It was just like what I was used to so I started a business and spent a lot of money putting it together. It didn't work, but it's okay. Sometimes every business may not work, and you shouldn't shut yourself saying you don't want to do anything else anymore. So Chams Design and Print didn't work, and I was okay with it. But it never stopped me on thinking new ways to do work or do business or start up a new thing. As a family, Suranjit and I went through, we had our ups and downs. We really had we lost our first daughter when I was 8 months pregnant.
Exactly.
So we went through a hardship. But, sometimes people say, this COVID, for me and Suranjit, actually COVID was a blessing.
In disguise.
Yes, because we lost my first daughter, Tashenka, in 2020 February, and then COVID hit 2020 March. So within a couple of weeks, the country went into shutdown mode, which Suranjit got to stay home. And we actually went through the process of the grieving together. And it's really important to grieve something like that together. So for me, COVID was a blessing. And actually through COVID is actually when my Chams Bakes business actually came to birth. Because I was bored, so I was experimenting. So that's how Chams Bakes came to life. With Chams Bakes, Chams Studio. Chams Studio is something like, I love designing, I like coming up. So all my odd little things go under that. Little, like maybe even they're more like hobbies even, not so much of a business. But I always had the heart of working with children. I love working with children. So when we were little, like I spoke to you before we started the broadcast, my sister and I and a couple of our friends, we had a foundation called the Sunflower Foundation. And the motto was, to a child, from a child we care. So we used to collect pocket money throughout the year. And in December, we will all break it. And we'll find an orphanage and go give a Christmas party with all our pocket money. So I've been thinking, what is my purpose? What does God want me to do? And I really felt in my heart, without waiting for others to change Sri Lanka, why can't you be the difference in your own way? So I created a foundation called the Rays of Hope Foundation. It focuses more with children because that's where my heart is. So for the first time, we did a show called Oh Come Let Us Adore Him. It was a Christmas concert which gave prominence to 3 organizations that I picked, which was LLG, Live, Love, Give. It was Angel Tree, they're long-term prisoners' children to empower them, and Word of Deed, which was also empowering estate kids for their education and stuff. So that's where my heart is. I want to do more. I think if everybody in Sri Lanka does one little good thing, I think this place can be a better. And Sri Lanka is an amazing place to live. My husband is going to watch this and be like, you said that on a record, because I always used to say, I want to go back to America, but I think we have a lot to do in Sri Lanka. And so that's kind of what I do now. I also are a part of Kingdom City, Sri Lanka, and, God is the center of our home, and in my life, everything I've done is through His grace, and He gives me the, you said I wear many hats.
Yeah.
I sometimes ask myself, how do I wear all these hats? But it's a grace that I've been granted, and I'm so thankful. And all the business stuff that I learned and what I do and how I operate is actually through what I have seen my mom manage her business. She has her own business called Tasty Caterers, and it's been there for 45 years. Long time.
So all that is just amazing, like to hear. Like it's like you're putting down your portfolio and just goes on. You can never end it. So understanding how many hats you're wearing, and coming into that whole situation of you having to manage our family, now you have a child, you have to manage your businesses, you have to give time for yourself. How on earth do you manage all this and allocate time for everything and manage things so perfectly?
So how I do it is actually, I actually put our family first and God together. Like, so for example, if I don't bake for 2 months because I have so much else going on with my family or with church or even my charities, I hold on my job, on my business, because sometimes it's no point doing business neglecting what's important to you, right? For me, my husband, my daughter, and God is very important. So if I have to do a lot for them and take a break from my business, that's the first thing I will probably give up. But I have structured in a way Chams Bakes. I have somebody who knows exactly how I do things, who can run it for me. But for me, prioritize-wise, I will just prioritize my daughter, my husband, and the church that I worship at, and then everything else follows. Sometimes it changes. Sometimes, like for December, Chams Bakes is very busy because I do brooders and stuff. So then you just got to manage. There might be days that I wake up at 1 a.m, start baking, but still have time to take Satara to school, and also all the lunches and the dinners and all the festivals you have to do. You just have to manage your time. You shouldn't neglect one to do the other. If it is getting up early, then you get up early. If it is sleeping late, but you shouldn't neglect your spouse, your child, or even serving God because of the business you have. You just manage, and and also when you have your own business, you can kind of navigate that. But if any of you who is listening to this is working for someone, you still got to, make some adjustments, like even, during the season, or, sometimes on a Saturday, just say, hey, Saturday is family day. You just have to find balance in just having time with your family, not only your spouse, even with your parents and stuff like that as well. It's very important to have a wholesome kind of a journey, because otherwise you neglect one, then what's the point?
I think that gives us a lot of perspective into life, because I think a majority of us who are now hustling and bustling to get the work done, to earn as much as we can, and we might say, give me like 3-4 years, I'm gonna work things out, and then I'm gonna focus on relationships or the marriage, I'm gonna get married in this, but give me time, I need to do these businesses. I'm having a 9 to 5, and again 5 to 9 have my own side hustle. That's, I think, what a majority of us are currently going through. I mean, given the economy, it could be, given the situation of a country, it could be, but that's the mentality that has now been brought up to. So given your perspective, like you said, business comes second, everything else, or your family and your priorities come first.
Right.
So explain to us, explain to everybody how to sort of make sure that we put those things together, because it's important that you make money.
Right.
It's important that you have all those things set, but as you mentioned, none of those matter if you don't have your loved ones with you. If all this goes to innocence, and
Yeah.
all you have left is your loved ones.
So I'm not saying you should neglect your business, and I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way. When you have your own business, it's easier than working for somebody. So what I always tell the young ones who I talk to, or just have a chat with, I always say, you need to make sure your company or wherever you work understands a work-life balance. That's very important, because if you don't have a work-life balance, you will see more and more people burning out. But then there's your generation who's like hustling and bustling. Then there's the new generation who doesn't want to do anything. There's this new generation, they think, just playing a video game or no. For those people, I say, look, life doesn't come easy. You work hard. Like I used to go to school from college from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., do homework from 3 p.m. to 4:35, take a 2-hour nap or 3-hour nap, and then I'm at work for a graveyard shift that starts at 9 in the night till 7 in the morning. And there's joy in it. And I always tell people too, wherever you work, you have to find the joy in working. Your business or working for somebody else. I worked for Mervyn's in California for 10 years before I started my own business. So I learned a lot from them. There's so much to learn by working for a company, so that you can take the good to a company that you build. So it's important how to juggle that. It's important, like I don't want anybody watching this and saying, hey, Chamindri said work comes second. No, that's how I do things. But as somebody working, I would say you just need to figure out, hey, if you have to work till late, say somebody is working European hours, okay? So which means you had to work till like 10, 11 in the night. Then you talk to your boss and say you only come to work at 10. So you have time to do stuff. You just have to learn how to manage, how to negotiate, how to kind of fit in work as is important to your family or for your loved ones. You shouldn't compromise one for the other.
It's a huge balancing act in a sense.
It is. But I think as young ones learn, there's a learning curve. I've also seen a lot of people getting burnt out, getting tired, there's this millennial who doesn't want to work anymore. They just think they can just go press a button and,
I get what you say.
So in my era, I like people, when I look at resumes, I want people to be in a company for a long period of time. Because for me, it shows sustainability. But now it seems like, okay, I'll jump from this. Oh, it's too much stress. I'll jump there. You just have to have life in perspective. There's no right and wrong answer. For each individual, it's different. But whatever works for you. And my only advice is just learn how to balance work, life, take a break, go on holiday. Because I always said something to a friend of mine. I said, go on holiday. When you come back, your job will still be there.
Yeah.
So then you come back and you might have to work an extra 2-3 hours to catch up, but your job will still be there. Your location will still be there. So that's how you got to really juggle work balance. It's really, really important. And I see a lot of people struggling with that, even our friends and family members. So it's just really, really important that we...
So do you have like a step-by-step guide or any advice that you say, because we always hear this, like, you have to have work-life balance, and there has to, you have to give your time for your priorities. But then again, we all circle back to the same question: how do I do this? How do I balance, and how do I know for myself that I'm actually balancing these things? How do we?
Sometimes you might slip it, and it's not the end of the world. Work-life balance might be a trial for a couple of years, but you learn from the mistake you do and try to adjust it. Like, I don't have this work-life balance from the time, if you talk to any of my American friends, they will tell you I was a workaholic. Okay, because I used to love working. Like, I would sometimes clock out so the company doesn't have to pay me overtime, but I would still work for another 5 hours till, like, the manager tells me, Chamindri, you better go home. They used to call me Chams, so they would say, Chams, go home. Even in teaching, I would just stay for. That's because I was also single. I had no other commitment, so work was my kind of family, and but once you start having a family, a spouse, then you just got to change a few things, and kind of, like in a car, the motor, your engine, you just have to, reset it, or even a watch, you have to reset it. So you just have to, there are series in your life, there are, what do you call it, periods, it's seasons in your life. You just have to, just tweak it and see what works for you. I'm almost 45. I didn't have this perfect from the age of like 18. No, I didn't. I would lie if I say that. But I also had the grace of God. Like, for me, like, for who I am today is through the grace of God. So for me, it's just tweaking, learning, unlearning. You make mistakes. No one is perfect. So even work-life balance, there are things may work, things may not work. So how do you kind of tweak things and kind of see what works for the company, what doesn't work for the company you work for? It's different from owning your own business and working. Like, for example, if I take when I was in America. So in America is when I worked for somebody. I worked for a retail store, and I was like the senior of visual arts. There are times like Christmas, from Thanksgiving, you just feel like you're living in office. You come at 4 a.m, you're there till midnight, you go home for 4 hours. You can do that when you're young, you don't have any other commitments. But I knew that was not the lifestyle I wanted once I got married. And also you have to compromise when you are married, when you're in relationships, when you just got to compromise to what that each person likes and dislikes, and you have to make time for each other, and work as well. Work is important because that's your bread and butter. But if you're only concentrating on your bread and butter, and then you're going to neglect the rest, you can have the bread and butter, but you might not have anything else.
Very, very insightful. I think there's a lot for us to learn here, because as I mentioned in the beginning, like, getting those things in place, working till you're till late, and to get things done and earn that bread, as you mentioned, is important for a lot of us. But then again, we tend to neglect our relationships, our families, things that are important to us than what we might think at the moment.
Right.
So
and wait till you have children. Then it becomes a whole different story. Then you got to balance your spouse, your child, your business, and everything else, and your friends. You can't neglect friends because they're part of your life. They're part of family. They're part of your family too. So it's basically, yeah.
I think there's a different perspective for a lot of us, because so far when we spoke about something, it's always about working, and like now seeing this from your perspective, from a person who's now a lot more experienced, I'd say, if that's fine, in her life, being through all the stages and challenges in her own life. Now you've in a certain state where you can look back and think what you did right, what you did wrong, and think this experience that you're listening to, this advice that you're getting is very important, because now you can sort of think back, like start thinking back from where you've said like it's important. So now if I as a person now think ahead and see in a 10 years time, 20 years time, what is worth for me? Is it the money or the relationships that I've built? And without a doubt it would be relationships. Sure, money comes in handy, but if you don't have someone to share your life with, if you don't have a family that you have a close connection with, what is the point at the end?
Exactly. So I always, so when I used to teach at the portfolio class, I used to always tell my graduating class, have short-term goals and long-term goals. Your short-term goal is 2 years. Your long-term goal is 5 years. Okay. So a lot of the students coming out of colleges and universities, they think soon as they graduate, they have to get a 3-digit salary. Now, this is art school. They have no experience working in the art, like in the sense of design firm. Okay. In art school, you are guided by your instructors and your other peers, your other students. But when you go to the real world, you're given a project. There are some projects you fail, some projects you exceed. But you can't, and also if you don't have an internship, going into a design firm, you're not going to get 100,000. You know, that's a no. Like everybody, you know, they have to do this thing, like what their salary. I read those and I just laugh. I'm like, you guys even don't have an internship. You haven't done an internship. You haven't spoken to a real client, you know? So it's really important, like, as much as you want to earn and build, it's steps, you know? You know, somebody will come and tell me, you know, I don't want to go work for 45,000. Where have you worked before? You know, coming out of A-levels, or where have you worked before? Have you worked in a bank? Have you gone for cases? Have you studied under another lawyer? You know, so it's baby steps. You know, I'm not saying you can't go and get 200,000 as salary, but I'm just putting it as low as possible so everybody kind of understand the perspective. You just have to learn. You learn through, for me, you learn more than your degree when you actually go out and work. Because that's when real life situations happen. You know, as a designer, you can give 10 concepts. Your client can come and say, we don't like any. So you go back to the drawing board, right? Because your client thinks different. Whereas in school, it's one instructor. You know, they will choose one thing from what you have given, and it doesn't happen in the real world. You know, you can send something to print and you can forget a number on a page. And when in the US, when you print like 3,000-4,000. Just imagine it went to print without a numbers on your book. You know, you learn. Like I have done jobs that I have made spelling mistakes and the print is all done. Sometimes you got to bite that bullet and redo it. You know, and my advice is always respect people in their space. No one is better. You can always learn from a client as much as a client can learn from you.
Very important things for us to grasp and learn and, you know, inculcate within ourselves as well. And another thing I'd like to mention and sort of talk about is, you spoke of how your mother or your parents are having this business, Tasty Caterers, for 45 years, and a majority of you must have had at least one bite of food from a place. But then again, coming from a background like that, from an entrepreneurial background, how were you humble enough to work graveyard shifts and do overtime at companies and build that sort of humbleness within yourself to do all that, given that you could have just come to Sri Lanka, worked with your mother and just, had your life here, but you made a choice to go through all that hardships, all those challenges. Speak to us about that.
That's a choice I made. For me, I felt it's good to learn on your own. And I actually will speak to everybody. It's great that your parents have an empire or your parents have a business that you can take on. But if you don't learn the basic principles of work, which is getting up in the morning, having responsibilities, completing your responsibilities to get a paycheck, right? So for me, I can tell you how many times my mom would have asked me, Dua, why are you doing this? Why don't you just come to Sri Lanka? But that's a choice I made. My sister made the same choice. My sister worked for my dad, and now she has her own business, which is Cozy Linen. And the humbleness I think I learned is from my mom. My mom started her business, Tasty Caterers, actually in her kitchen 45 years ago, and she started it small. And it's also important as you grow in your business, in your entrepreneurship, you still keep that humbleness. Because you shouldn't forget the people who helped you to get there. And that's one thing I have learned from my mom. My mom takes care of staff who has been working for her. After they finish working, she still takes care of them every month. So those are things that she actually has inculcated in us, to be humble, to be nice, to be giving. What you give is what you get. And that's actually all credit to my mom for teaching us from a very young age how to treat people. They might not be your same caliber, but you still can be kind. And that's the same thing I want to teach my daughter to do. And that's how the beginning of that. It's, I think, just watching my mom, how she did business. But coming back to your question, why did I not come back to Sri Lanka? Why did I do these graveyard shifts? I think by doing that, I have more appreciation to what I have now.
Sort of like a delayed gratification. In
Exactly, because if you come and you have everything, you're not going to, what's the correct word now? You're not going to appreciate it. You think like you're entitled to it. But just working graveyard shift, I would never take back the 5 years I worked with going to school, because I feel God really trained me. My 18 years in the US, I actually take it as a training period. I think God just has been training me for something bigger. And I don't know what that is. But I just know that experience, I would never get it in Sri Lanka. Because I don't think it's kind of accepted in Sri Lanka as well, But I just felt that period I was there for a reason. And when the time was right, He brought me right back to where I belong.
And I think that also leads us to this point where you should find happiness in the journey and not the destination, right? Are you a believer in that?
Oh, I think so. I really think so. It's, it's sometimes, I kind of told you this before we got into the show. You can have the billions, but if you're not happy, what's the point on having the billions, right? Sometimes you have to enjoy what you're doing. You have to have the joy. Anything you do, like for me, being a mom, I have to have the joy of being a mom, being a wife, being an entrepreneur, being a leader of a charity. You have to have the joy, and also being in the presence of God and doing His work, you have to have a joy for it. If you think it's a job, and if you think it's another thing I have to do, you're just going to get drained. Like for me, going on a Sunday morning at 7:30 to church to help organize, make sure everything is ready when people come to enjoy the service, I do it with a joy. I don't do it like, oh my God, it's a Sunday, I'm serving, I have to go to church. If you do that, the purpose of that, you lose. You truly lose it. Like if you go to work and say, it's another day at work, okay, now what is, now Charlie going to tell me to do, and okay, now this meeting. So every time you're looking, is it 5 o'clock for me to leave? If you're doing that, don't be in that job. Because you don't have the joy, because you can't give 100%
unless you enjoy what you do.
if you're not enjoying what you're doing. Because then it becomes more like it's a paycheck. I even tell my staff who works for me, I said, don't be here if you're unhappy, because you can't always give. But if you want to move forward, like do whatever you do, even the little thing, do it with joy, because then everything else becomes joy. You have to create your joy.
So does that mean you need to have a passion in everything that you do in order to multitask or to handle a lot of things at the same time? Does that?
I think that helps.
Helps.
It helps. Because if you don't want to become a carpenter, okay, and you're doing it just as a job, after a while you're just going to get tired of ripping the wood, right? But if you have the joy of being a carpenter, you will create new things, even with the scrap, right? So does that answer your question?
It does.
And also it's important, like you don't do business or you don't do or create businesses as a hobby. Because then it's not a business, it's a hobby. You have to kind of draw the line. Is it a business or is it a hobby? And these are for all the entrepreneurs out there. You need to see, how are you going to improve your business? What's your next step? And it's important to do that, because a business that you're going to do as a hobby will never succeed. And it's always good to have mentors to help you go through your ideas. Like I always balance my ideas with my husband. Like I told you before, my husband thinks I have an idea every morning. But I have somebody to say, Chams, let's just stick to one. Or he will say, it's a great idea, but I don't have the peace about it.
Yeah.
And if you're a husband and wife and you want to start a business, it's always important that you get the support from your spouse, and you don't do it alone, because you can't do a business alone. Like you can't raise a family alone. You can't do anything alone.
A lot of things to process for me as well, just going through all these motions of trying to understand where should exactly I stand. But one of the reasons to why I asked you that question is there might be individuals out there who are just trying to make ends meet, put some food on their table. So they might not necessarily have the job that they won't have the job that they have the passion for.
Right.
So what sort of advice would you give to a person like that to sort of get where they want to get?
So say that you have a job just to just say cover your rent, and I always say keep that job, even as much as you don't probably like it. Keep it, but also see what else is out there. I always tell people, you can have a job, you can start something on your own on the side, right? But one advice I give is, husband and wives, please don't do businesses together. Please.
Good advice.
That doesn't work, because then you bring your business stuff and work stuff to your bedroom, and that's not a healthy relationship. So there's always opportunity. There's always, ways to make it work. Like if you're married, see, for all the young ones out there, I think you work to get a salary, but you have time to experiment. Like I have experimented, right? I did a business wrong and, didn't do well. That doesn't mean I'm a bad entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right? It just, the way I look at it, God, I tried it. It didn't work. Thank you for closing it. That's the way I look at it. So, you make ends meet, but also see, while making ends meet, what is out there? There are so many opportunities. And the answer is not going abroad. Because guys, I worked for 18 years in the US. If you guys think going to America is going to be this bed of roses, the American work culture is the worst. I'm sorry, because they don't have holidays. There's only 7 holidays for the entire year.
Well, we have a lot more here.
And you only get 42 weeks off. Okay, so you just work hard. So if you can go abroad and work hard, like some people say, it's okay, I'll even do 2 jobs. So then why can't you do it in Sri Lanka? Why can't you do 2 jobs in Sri Lanka? People say, oh, but taxes here. But do you know how much tax you're going to pay in the other countries? How much more childcare is? How much more so there's so much more. But I think people just jump to the easiest conclusion is going abroad is the answer. But going abroad ain't the answer. This country is golden. There's so many opportunities. If we can work hard overseas, if you work the same, work hard and manage time, I think the key is managing your time, allocating time for everything. I think you can make it work as much as you make it work overseas.
In your own country.
Yeah, in your own country, you're giving back. Why go back to a country that you're not even a citizen and work hard for a country like that? Yes, somebody's going to say, yeah, but I get 200, 300,000. But you work a steady job, and what if you do a side hustle that you can develop, So yeah. That's
sort of the solution.
Yes.
If you're wondering, you have any questions, that's the answer right there. So I think we poked a few eyes in our audience here. Somebody would take her advice, listen in, and try to understand the essence of what you're trying to say, because we are not trying to put anyone down for going abroad. It's not the point. But
exactly.
Trying to understand, if you put in the same effort here, maybe you have a chance.
Exactly.
So that's important. So, a big question. We've talked about entrepreneurs, we've talked about time management, we've talked about how you should, juggle a lot of things and do things at the same time. The biggest question I have is, how do one identify themselves as, okay, I need to be an entrepreneur? How do they differentiate themselves or understand where they need to go and where they need to be? Any advice on that? So, everybody is not built to be an entrepreneur. Okay, and everybody is also not built to work for somebody. But it's the same concept. An entrepreneur or somebody working, you have to have the joy, the heart, and the compassion. So again, I want to tell everybody is not an entrepreneur. And the person who is an entrepreneur also needs to know how to manage staff, how to understand each one. Again, you have to bring the joy, you have to bring the heart, and you just have to make it work.
And it doesn't matter, you're an entrepreneur and things don't work and you have to, it's okay to fail. And that's something I want to tell you guys. It's okay to fail once in a while. You don't have to be this perfect entrepreneur. There are things we learn as we go. There are mistakes we make. But when it's a mistake, you have to have the humbleness to understand it was a mistake and correct it, and not just be stubborn saying, I don't want to fail, so I'm just still going to continue. That's where most of the entrepreneurs, especially the younger entrepreneurs, that's where they kind of go wrong, because they feel failing is a shame and they can't face society. No, failing is a learning experience. It's a learning curve. No one is perfect. I have failed, and it's okay to fail. It's not the end of the world to fail on something that you start. You go back to the drawing board and you restructure. You do things different. That's for an entrepreneur. Like, I have to stress, it's okay to fail. I'm pretty sure my mom has failed, a few times. She has opened probably a restaurant in not a good location, and it's okay. Those things happen. But, for me, with, doing things prayerfully and, sometimes maybe I hear wrong too. And I probably have started something. It's okay. But before it goes too far, you need to identify that before you get into debt, because the pride takes over, saying, I did a mistake. You don't want to fail with your friends, your family. You want to show, oh no, I can do it. But you have to really identify quickly if you're doing something wrong, and then maybe get the proper help. Or just say, you know what, I made a mistake. Let me regather myself and let's start. Get some other people probably who has done, get help. And it's okay to get help. And that's another thing, like most of us Sri Lankans don't like to do, is get help from others. Everybody doesn't do it perfectly, but that doesn't mean you can't do it perfectly either. But most likely you learn. Always take your challenges and your learning as an experience, not as a failure. And that's, I think, really, really important. For the people who are working, it's the same thing, guys. You have to go to work having joy. If you go to work as a nuisance, oh my God, I don't want to be here, I think you may need to think if that's the place you want to work. You have to go to work wanting to get new challenges. Sometimes, just having that conversation with your boss and negotiating stuff, you have to have that openness and give it wherever you work, even if it is your job or working for somebody else or your own job, give it 200%. Because when you give 200% to anything you do, same thing with a marriage, give 200% to your marriage. Give 200% to your children. Something good comes out of it. But people who are working out there, just work with a joy, with a heart, and always work as it's your own. When you own your role, even as a janitor, if you take that role and you have pride in what you're doing, there's a lot of joy that comes out of it.
I think something that we at GEP live by for a long time is living through happiness, passion, and purpose. I think all these three things are very important in your life. It could be your work life or your family, your relationships. That comes to another huge question or a dilemma, or something that people are trying to figure out is, how do you live a happy and purposeful life?
For me, to be honest, it's actually my happiness come actually from God. For me, God's first, and then whatever I do, like I said, I've probably made mistakes. I probably heard God wrong too. I'm not perfect. But when you have him, he has a purpose in your life. Sometimes people ask, what is your purpose? You may not know, but there is a purpose and a plan for you. So to your question is how, whatever you believe in, you have to have a purpose, a goal that you go after. But it's no point going after a purpose or a goal neglecting your loved ones, because then there's no purpose. You have to kind of take everybody who you love and care through this journey.
So simple as that.
Simple as that.
A lot learned today. Before we end our session for the day, any advice that you want to give to our audience, any challenges that you went through, any learnings that you got from these, anything you think would help our audience make their lives better and build a better life, anything you want to say?
So whatever challenges you have or failures you have, take it as a learning experience. Don't take it as a failure. Every mistake you make, look at the positive of it. Don't look at the negative of it. And that's what I live by. I live by everything happens, you find the positive of it. As much as how when I, lost my daughter, it was very hard. But I knew deep down in my heart, I would have something greater and better. There are painful periods we go through, but through that pain, there's also joy that comes. And you just have to find that balance. And I always say, I thrive over mistakes than mistakes I make. I thrive on it because there's new things to learn. Why did I make that mistake? How can I make it better? Life is not perfect. Like, I still probably make mistakes. I probably say stuff to hurt people. I probably still make mistakes, but I learn from my mistakes. Don't ever think you're not good enough. That is something a lot of people do, is you're not good enough. Maybe you're not good enough for somebody, but you're good enough for somebody else. So my advice is, don't put yourself down. Learn from your challenges, learn from your ups and downs, roller coaster. Life is a roller coaster. You have ups and downs, but learn from it. Don't think it's a challenge and the life, the whole world is on my, no, just learn from your challenges and be positive. Every negative, find a positive to it. And I think life will be a better place.
So simple, so easy to understand, and no wonder she was a professor for 18 years, if I'm not wrong. How she puts things into perspective is really, really eye-opening for me, and I believe it is the same for the audience as well. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was a joy talking to you guys.
It's always a pleasure to have you. So I think to conclude everything that we've learned today is how you should manage tasks, how you should balance out. Basically, that's, I think, the main focus of our chat today, was to manage your relationships, manage your work, and anything that's important to you, and have a nice balance between all of them. And I believe that our audience got the best advice from the best person who has experienced it throughout her life and has now come to a stage where she could just put that 1 + 1 together and explain to us how that becomes 2. We all know this. We all know that we need to prioritize a relationship. We know we have to manage our time, but not a lot of us excel in it, or at least try to do it. So thank you so much for putting all that into perspective, and I think this is really helpful for anyone who's listening in. So for you to get more content like this, for you to support us in bringing this journey to you, please subscribe, like and comment your favorite moment from our session today. And we'll see you from our next podcast. Thank you.